All right, it is 1 p.m. and I will call the meeting to order. Welcome to all those who on this chilly day may be streaming us, either live or will be watching, the many that will be watching later. As I said, 1 o'clock, and we will begin the committee of the whole, our first committee of the whole meeting for 2025. And with that, I will ask, are there any added items to the agenda? Seeing none, I will ask for an adoption of the agenda. Councillor Walsh,
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that Council adopt the Committee of the Whole meeting, regular and closed, for Monday, February 23rd at 1 p.m.
all those in favor? Thank you, passed unanimously, and I should take this opportunity to indicate that Councillor Cummings is away from today's Committee of the Whole meeting, as is CAO Brent Williams, and sitting in is our Director of Operations, Adrian Pedro, who is filling in for CAO Williams. Moving on to item 2, adoption of the previous minutes by consensus. Does anybody have any edits, revisions, changes to the Committee of the Whole minutes of December 2nd, 2024? Being none, by consensus, we will adopt those minutes as published. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3, presentations and delegations. Page 5 of your agenda, item 3A, procedural bylaw review, committee recommendations. I'm not sure if there will be individuals from the committee and or Director Pedro, but I'll turn it over to you and we will go from there.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Our Procedural Bylaw Review Committee has been at this task for quite some time. I will pass it over to Councillor Blatz. She will take us through our changes and proposal here.
Thank you, Director Pedro and Deputy Mayor Wilson. Yes, we met as an ad hoc committee about 6 times over the past few months, and we have come up with some recommendations to move forward with this document. And as a reminder, each and every one of our bylaws and documents are always a living document and a working document and can be amended at any point in time if need be. And this document will be, once we have reviewed it today and accepted it for information, be sent to a legal department for review to be brought back to council for final decision at a later date. So if we would like to move through this document then, noting in our background, we have a few changes that were referred to as the TBC recommendations, which we took a training session with Todd Brandt Consulting back in 2023. Many of these recommendations were based on his, or are from his department. Any housekeeping items, again, too, they can be reviewed and will be brought back. I don't believe that we need to point those out today. But if you do note something that could be a spelling error or something at a later date, please feel free to forward it to our legislative coordinator, Marcy McKinnon. The following definitions have been removed as though we are no longer part of an authority. We will now be known as BCCs, pardon me. Discussion points for council, they are listed here. We can go through these. We could go through this document page by page, but highlighting those particular documents as we go through it. So then if we move along then, as you see on page 8 of our document, I guess I should maybe touch on those as well. Oh, those discussion points, yes, sorry, I've done that. On page 8 and 9, there were no changes, just mostly definitions. Continuing on to page 10, and you will note that will be one of our first one, is item 39, table a matter, and rather than use the word table, we, in consultation with TBC, we recommend that we change that to postpone. So rather than table an item, we are going to postpone it. And I think part of the clarification or clarity on that is in many parliamentary procedures, when you bring an item to a meeting for approval, you bring it to the table, which they say table. So he felt it would be add a little bit more clarity and definition to change table to postpone when we're just postponing that item. Moving along to item number 44, 43 and 44, or 43 particularly, pardon me. We had two recommendations here, and the first one being council committee shall be established and governed by law. And then the second one was a recommendation, council committee shall be established, mandated, given any necessary authority, and be governed by bylaw. And we wanted to bring that back for consideration for council. And the reason why I felt, well, there was discussion. The first sentence to some of us made more sense because we didn't want this to be too ambiguous where it could be interpreted in many different ways. This seemed to be a little clearer. And the point of that is if we're a brand new councillor sitting and looking and reviewing this document, it might be a little bit more direct than to be, you know, to give it more clarity was the idea. You can see item 44 has been changed. And the recommendation again came from TBC that removing a motion to waive provision of a bylaw can be brought forward and must be unanimously accepted, whereas he thought it could be 2/3 majority of council for the duration of that particular meeting. Then moving along, item 49, we were just going to remove, and as it stated, the chair does have the right to make a motion. You have a question? Sorry. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Daly.
So back on item number 43, would you like to discuss that while we're here? Or would you like to move on and cover the whole document and then discussion as a whole for the document?
Well,
Let's go through the 5 discussion points that have been noted, and then we can come back and specifically talk on those. And then for the whole document, if council and/or the committee want to raise anything else, we can certainly do that. But let's briefly touch on these 5 points that were noted in the agenda. I think we're through all but 1 or 2. And then we'll come back and then we'll review points starting with 39 through to point 73 and have a discussion on any other points if that works. Document.
will of council, it makes no difference to me. There's actually 7 points that we were going to be reviewing, but we could, sorry, I should have clarified that. I guess I thought we would just go through the entire document and then come back and have discussions, but
Well, if we're okay, let's go through the 7 points initially that have been specifically flagged, and then we can talk in the broader sense of the document.
okay, thank you for that. Okay, so moving along then, to page 12, again, just some housekeeping items. Oh, sorry, I did miss one. My apologies again here. No, 49. Point 73. Yeah. Thank you. I was on the page. Point 73, the agenda is established by the CAO in consultation with the mayor and the legislative coordinator, subject to final approval by council, removing from mayor, and because we do approve this agenda near the beginning of the meeting, and I think that's a little bit better for transparency's sake that we are as a council. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll go back to 73. And so that's what we had thought would be just a better way for more transparency. Going back to item number 73, a councillor attending more than 2 consecutive council committee meetings through electronic communication must obtain approval by council. And hypothetically speaking, when we discussed this, the ideology behind it was, you know, if a councillor decided to take an extended vacation for 2 to 3 months, you know, are they truly representing the electors who voted them in to serve the community as a whole and as a councillor? So that was something that we wanted to have some clarity on. We want to know if there should be some kind of stipulations put into what are going to be the reasons why we would grant an extended leave. And I look forward to kind of a fulsome discussion with that. Page 15 is just more or less housekeeping. And page 90, 93 and 94, something we may also want to discuss, although not listed. Deputy mayor appointment may be waived if a councillor does not wish to hold a position. And we felt this might be something, if you're a brand new elected councillor, you may not feel comfortable chairing a meeting, and therefore you may waive that for the first year. Item number, moving along then to item number, 100. And, and then again, this was for, I got my notes here, pardon me, bear with me. Okay, and as per point, for the closed meetings, as it was noted in a document that we received via email from Legislative Clerk Marcy McKinnon for a little bit of clarity, it is noted here that, I do have a cheat sheet here, I wrote some notes. That when a meeting is in a closed session, to the public, the meeting may contain any persons or persons invited to attend by council. Council shall have an employee or contractor in attendance for all closed sessions. And this includes to and is not limited to, and I think the key word here is may, because for protection for all involved, if we were discussing something like the CAO evaluation or anything, we may wish to have a lawyer with us present or someone along those lines. So I think that, and again, this document will go back to a lawyer for legal consideration. So I think that that is one of the things that we will have to review, but I think before we decide to remove it or not, we should look at it and have the lawyer come back to us on that opinion. And I believe that is the 123.
Recording of the votes.
Yes, recording of votes. And that was, we had a discussion in regards to that. And of course, as we all know, that moving forward, once we move to a new system, that they will automatically, we can incorporate that recording of votes. And realistically, right now, if people are watching our live stream or watching the meetings or present during our council meetings, they would be aware of how each and every councillor does in fact vote by reviewing it. So I think at this point in time, we will need to discuss how we wish to move forward. But, and again, as a reminder, at any point in time when there's a motion on the floor, prior to the motion being made, a councillor may indicate that they wish to have the vote recorded. And at which time I think that when we decide to vote against a particular motion, it is better to speak out as to say why we do not or why we do support said motion. So. And that, folks, brings us to that. So I think now we will open it up if there's anyone who has any questions, starting with Councillor Daly. You had the first question.
Yeah, and again, what I would suggest is let's work through these 7 specific points that were identified, highlighted in the agenda. Councillor Blatz, you referenced a few other points. It's, I'm not sure, a 15 or so page, 20-page document. You mentioned items, I think, 93 and 94 potentially for discussion. But let's deal specifically with the 7 that are, starting with point number 39. We'll give everybody will get a chance to speak to it if they have any input. Hopefully our discussion will be brief, succinct, and to the point. We'll obtain consensus as far as direction for the legislative coordinator to note any changes, as Councillor Blatz said, that would then be captured, sent to legal, administration and legal, and then ultimately come back to council at a future time. So starting with item 39, are there any issues around the table or concerns, comments with the removal of the reference to tabling an item and replacing it with postponing an item? Councillor Walsh?
No, postpone is a better word than table. Most people understand that. But Robert's Rules of Order also states, if you table something, it could be gone forever. And they also state, you table with a future date if you want to bring it back. Are we suggesting postpone, it could be last forever? Or do we have a definition around postpone so that people will know what we mean when we say postpone it? That would be my concern.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Councillor Daly?
Yeah, I'd agree with Councillor Walsh on the definitions of those two words. One thing I thought of when I read this postponed was that, anything that is postponed, I'm wondering if we shouldn't have a date in which we're going to readdress it again. Kind of a bit of a timeline in there so that when we have a end date on items, whether it be policy, bylaws, actions, whatever, usually when they're accompanied by a date, they get done. And so that's why I feel that it would make it a little bit more effective if we had a date included in that.
Do the two of the three committee members have any thoughts on that? And then I'll turn to anybody else that may have any thoughts as far as specifying a return date for a postponed item to come back for further discussion, deliberation.
Well, I guess it would depend on whoever would make that particular motion. First of all, I mean, we should be more cognizant of what we're doing and say if we're tabling or postponing a motion that we wish to have it come back. And we should specify at that point in time and as a date. And being that this is under the definitions right now, I think that, we're just going to say the definition of postpone. And I think then when we go under the items of motions, then we could specify at that point in time. I had a note here, pardon me, I'm a little disorganized apparently. But that would be my suggestion, and I think maybe I would look for, or I'll let Councillor Ryan speak to it, and then maybe we'll look for direction from our legislative coordinator, Marcy McKinnon.
Councillor Ryan, go ahead. I have a thought, and then for sure we can get some input from our legislative coordinator if so necessary. Councillor Ryan, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Blatz. When I look at the word, postpone, I think it does work better than table, simply because it makes it very clear. I agree that we do need to set timelines, but when we talk about timelines, I think I would like to refer to the CEO at that time. Typically, and what happened with last council meeting when we tabled a couple of items to come back, he would know better as to how much time it would take to involve getting additional information. Sometimes that could be just one council meeting, but sometimes it could be two or three. When we do a postponement, perhaps we could add in the definition saying, and setting a date for the item to come back to council in the definition. I'm not sure if legislative coordinator Marcy McKinnon could talk to that, but certainly that would be my feeling. And obviously legal could respond to that as well. But when we do any postponements, my feeling would be that we would certainly ask the CEO what he felt for a timeline.
Yeah, and my comment before I open it up to the legislative coordinator, similar to your comments, Councillor Ryan, it would depend on, obviously, the nature of the item we're postponing and the reasons. If it's simply to allow council more time to review and digest the information, you would probably have a fairly short turnaround. But I think, as you alluded to, Councillor Ryan, if we're going to be asking administration to do some further work, and depending on the details and how much more information we desire as council, it would be perhaps premature to set a timeline depending on the amount of work that needs to be done. I think it'll be incumbent on administration simply to have that tracking of that item or those items that we're going to postpone. Typically, I don't think we have a lot, or we haven't historically, but it'll be incumbent to make sure we do have a proper tracking system and that once the work is done, it comes back to council. But if the legislative coordinator has any information or input, welcome that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. And I think maybe then under general rules or special provisions, there could be an added item in there, particularly when we're discussing motions, the ability of the mayor, for example, to act and make a motion. So perhaps maybe a provision could be in there upon a postponement of a said item agenda there, would be a timeline. And however anybody could refer that, and I would refer back to, again, our legislative coordinator, Marcy McKinnon, if there is something else. And a reminder, again, this will go back to legal.
Thank you, through the chair. I might propose something along the lines of, with direction on a return date when applicable, to the point that we're discussing. You're defining it in the definition, so we could just add when applicable to include a date at that point, if that's acceptable.
Oh, that's acceptable. I think that would be acceptable.
Yeah, you can certainly go with when applicable, or the often used and very nebulous, within a reasonable amount of time. Councillor Daly?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. That's kind of what I was going to suggest, when applicable or as needed or something like that. So I would agree with that.
Okay, if there are no other comments, Legislative Coordinator, are you good with some wording on point number 39 and postponing and a definition, which we have, and then some reference to a reasonable timeline? Okay. Item number 43. This was relative to the authority and the two options there. So either we're, I think, looking to maintain essentially the wording there with a small adjustment, edit, revision, removal of the word policy or adopt a totally revised line, which is in red there. Again, I'll open it up to any comments around the floor, and then we will simply do a little straw vote, consensus vote as to retain what's there or adopt the revised.
Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Councillor Blatz?
Well, one thought I had, I've been through this document several times, but perhaps maybe it could be the original one, council committees shall be established and governed by bylaw, approved by council, where appropriate authority is delegated to a council committee, and such committee and its mandates shall be established by bylaw. Now, that to me does make sense, but I'm trying to put this into perspective that we all sitting around the table do understand it, but we have to also consider that there could be new people, and there will be new people at the next election, and how may they interpret it, or just the average person who wishes to have a little Sunday fun day reading when you want to read the bylaw.
I guess my question to the council, and maybe specifically to the two members of the committee, what risk or exposure are we trying to mitigate here? Because excuse and forgive my ignorance and naivety, but at the end of the day, anything that is to be decided and adopted has to come before council. A standing committee, an ad hoc committee, whatever the recommendation. So council ultimately will make the final decision. So I'm just wondering, why would we even change what's there? Councillor Platt, or Councillor Ryan, sorry?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and that was my opinion as well on this sort of item. Just thought, well, if it's not broke, why change the wording? I'm fine with the original wording as it is, and my recommendation would be that we would keep it.
Go ahead, Legislative Coordinator.
Thank you. It was just proposed as a streamlined verbiage for the two sentences above. I would encourage you to do your straw poll.
Thank you for that guidance. And Councillor Daly.
Yeah, that was my sentiments as well. When I read this, I'm going, what problem are we trying to fix? And also, the original statement with the amendments, also has a lot more description and clarity to it than the one below, which leaves maybe some thinking outside of the guidelines. And so that was my thinking when I wanted to make the comment the first time, was that I would say let's stick with the original wording, but I would also agree going with a straw poll.
Thank you for those comments, and unless there are no other thoughts, input, do we have agreement around the table to retain the existing clause with that revision and basically the deletion of the words policy or? Is that the agreed approach? Thank you then. We will adopt the wording as is with that small little deletion, and we will now go on to point 3, I believe, or item 3, point 44, which is deletion entirely of the point that's mentioned. And basically, the deletion is driven by the fact that it is already captured and covered. So point 44 is already captured in item 43 for those that are following at home, or many listeners and viewers. Is there any comment around entirely deleting that one clause verbiage, because it is essentially covered off in the succeeding item? Are there any thoughts? Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, and I have to agree with the fact that with the committee, that why put more words into a document that already is lengthy for the public and new council at the time?
Okay, unless I see or hear any other comments, I think we will go with the committee's recommendation, which is basically the elimination of that particular clause, because it is, as pointed out in the agenda, covered in point 43. I think we have agreement there. I know we have agreement there. Item 4 under the discussion points for council, point 49. We need to either determine if we're going to keep the verbiage, what the verbiage is going to look like. Again, I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. In this instance, TBC is basically just suggesting to remove it. My feeling was that to keep it in, and the wording that I've provided, that all members of council, including the chair, are able to make motions, and the chair is encouraged to assist other members of council in working motions. In the wording of, sorry, I should say in the wording of motions, not in the working. Just cut that. So my feeling is that I've been watching quite a few other councils in how they run their meetings, and in particular the mayor chair. Some mayors do not make any motions. I think it's rare that Mayor Dahl is making a motion, and some mayors are making all the motions. My feeling is that the mayor should be able to make a motion when they feel that it's necessary. Their role as a leader for council is to provide assistance to those members who are struggling to make putting together a motion. And in particular, when you have new members on council who are unfamiliar with how structuring a motion is occurring. And I think that this is a good way of having the mayor in the leadership role and specifying within the procedural bylaw that this is something that they could do to help and assist new members from coming on council, or even veterans who may still have a little bit problem putting together a proper motion. I just think that it's good. It's obviously something that will go through legal and can obviously be taken out. But I think it's nice to have that in there so that you don't have, what happens if you have a mayor who is totally dominating and wants to run all the motions and no member of council is making any. I don't agree with that occurring, and I think it's fair to share the load around the council. And so that's why I put in this wording. I don't agree with the original wording because it just seems to me that a mayor should be able to make a motion and encourage others to to do so as well. So that was my feeling on adding this wording.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, through the chair. And I'd like to thank Councillor Ryan for her way of thinking there. Honestly, when there's an election, you elect a chief elected official and 6 councillors, and the people elect those positions. And I did have some, not often, and I agree with what Councillor Ryan has shared, not often, but I have had maybe a handful of people say to me, why don't you ever make motions? And I agree with Councillor Ryan's way of thinking, that I respect the discussion and dialogue of 6 councillors around the table, and she is correct. It's the position of the chief elected official to keep the movement going. However, I was elected as a chief elected official. If I wish to make a motion, I should have the right to be able to make a motion. I don't agree. If I've never watched a council meeting where the mayor's made lots of motions. I would not agree with that at all. In fairness, there's 7 people that were elected around the table, and the right should still be to the chief elected official to choose to make a motion.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Councillor Walsh?
Yeah, Councillor Ryan makes a good point. Have you ever taken any courses on chairing meetings and that? It's exactly how she has described it. That's the chair's role, is to facilitate good, presence, good process. And you're right, if the mayor or the chair is always making motions, they're advocating for their thinking, and they have a situation where they maybe influence more than they should be able to. So I agree with this. It's good wording.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. And with that, Councillor Blatz, did you have a comment? Oh, okay. Councillor Daly?
Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Ryan's comments as well. Being a active member of a council, the mayor should have the ability to make a motion. And I agree that the mayor shouldn't be making all the motions, but I believe that when needed, I think the mayor should be able to make motions and also assist with refining motions as well. So I'm in agreement with this statement as well.
Perfect. My only comment is not often that Councillor Ryan and I agree, but in this case, I had a big check mark by her recommendation, so I think we're on board, and away we go. Councillor Blatz, you will have the last word.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. And I just want to point out here that the recommendation from TBC suggests removing this point, as the chair always has the right to make a motion, and I think that he was looking to streamline this document and maybe make it a little shorter by 1 paragraph perhaps, but I just wanted to point that out. I appreciate the comments around the table, but that was the recommendation, and that was why he based it, by the basis of the recommendation. Thank you.
And thank you, Councillor Blatt, yeah, for mentioning that. We all are about quick, nimble, agile, and being concise and direct and to the point. Again, I think though, and certainly I support the recommendation that Councillor Ryan has put forward as far as the wording, and I'm seeing and hearing, I think we have at least the majority to proceed and have the legislative coordinator embed that particular comment around motions and so on into the document. Okay, moving ahead. Thank you for a good discussion on that item. Item number 5 under the discussion points for council. Point number 73, attendance by electronic communication means. There is the option, certainly within the MGA, for, with today's technology, participation in various meetings, including council meetings electronically. I think Councillor Blatz referenced in her introductory remarks. Look forward to having a fulsome discussion around this point as to how and what some boundaries, some guardrails may be if we in fact choose to go down this path of electronic participation. So with that, I'll open it up to the floor. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. And again, I think that setting parameters around it is more looking for those extended type vacations. I mean, realistically, we could all have health issues and they would be a private matter, and all as council would have to do is grant their availability via electronic means without disclosing any personal information. But I really think that if somebody was going to take an extended vacation, not only should council be aware of it, but so should all of the residents who voted that individual in. And that was my only concern, is the fact that, and the committee's concern, and I don't know if council wishes to add something at this point in time where we are going to deem what is applicable or not applicable, or just leave it as that sort of unsaid responsibility to council to determine what is an extended leave and what isn't.
Thank you, Councillor Blatson. Before I get to Mayor Dahl and then to Councillor Ryan, again, the committee specifically had a couple of specific questions, and I'll just briefly indicate them. Does council support attendance by electronic means? Should there be criteria around a request to use electronic participation? Does council wish to add reasons for remote attendance? Is approval of some type required in advance? And how would that approval be obtained? Those were some seeds of questions that the committee planted. And with that, I will go to Mayor Dahl and then to Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through the chair. This one puzzles me because we already, elected officials already have a standard that if you miss so many meetings, is that 2 months? What is it, 4 meetings? 3 months? Okay. Oh, okay, 3 meetings. So this confuses me with the fact that if they miss 2 to 3 months, they have to have approval from council anyways. Do they not? We're just talking about electronically though, right?
Well, and I guess, yeah, that is the question. Like, if you're participating electronically, are you technically missing the meeting? Physically, you're not there, but you're still participating in the meeting. Councillor Blatz.
Yes, and we understood that, and that was not really the point. The point was, under what circumstances do we allow electronic attendance? And again, the point was, if it's a health issue, council should, without question, grant it without asking any, personal questions. But if and I'll use Mayor Dahl as an example, she decided to go to Arizona for 2 months, should we allow her to attend an electronic meeting when she's not in attendance physically, and is that an adequate reason to miss out? And again, I'll reiterate my point earlier, we are all elected by the residents of the town of Olds to represent the town of Olds as a whole. And so therefore, I think it is important to attend regularly. Legislative Clerk.
Go ahead, Legislative Coordinator.
Thank you, and through the chair. The points that I have on the screen, which follow under point 5 on your cover sheet, that speak to section 199 of the MGA, and then that second paragraph that says council can enforce physical attendance at council meetings and council committee meetings, and a councillor has no right to attend remotely unless it's authorized by council by bylaw. What we're seeking here is criteria on that for exactly the to avoid the situation that was just described, and or should somebody have to attend electronically, what are the criteria that council accepts and how do they get permission to do that, to attend? Right now, our bylaw currently says that they can attend, so we're just looking to dig deeper in that and get better criteria because that's what we've been told to do.
Thank you, Legislative Coordinator. Crystal clear now. And over to Councillor Ryan and then to Councillor Daly.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson, sorry. And that's what I was going to speak to, so thank you very much, Legislative Coordinator. The idea was, Councilor Blatz has already mentioned, so I don't need to repeat it, but I think that if you have legitimate reason not to be attending in person, a legitimate reason, my point would be a health concern, you're hospitalized, you're bedridden, you cannot attend because of a health thing. I don't think you need to go into detail. You can just say, make a request to council saying, I am going to be attending, the next 6 weeks on electronic because I'm unavailable due to a health reason. Simple as that. Another concern would be if you have some kind of issue within the family, a death in the family or a member of the family who is, say, in hospice or something like that, who, you need to be present for them. I could see that as a means not to attend in person. Those would be, I think, the two things that I would see would be major criterias. I can't come up with any other ones, but I'm sure that, there might be. So I'll open it up to anybody else.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, and I agree with this as well, that we should keep our citizens of Olds as well as the rest of our colleagues here on council informed of any kind of extended leave from being here physically in our capacity. I feel that attending electronically is less effective than being here in person, and I believe that there's a certain limit that we should put on that as far as how long a person can be away from this council. I do agree that if it's a health issue or whatever issue it may be, that it is reviewed by council and whether it's acceptable or not. The other thing is, it says council or committee. Sometimes the norm of committee is also electronic. And so maybe we need to put in there something to the effect of when applicable or when out of the norm. I don't want to get too complicated with this, but, like, for instance, just this week I attended an electronic committee meeting. So, there is situations where committees are electronic, and I don't know whether that's encompassed in this or not. No. So, okay. And so, and I think, I'm in agreement with this as far as everything else goes.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. My question, and we'll continue the discussion beyond my comments as needed. I agree with what's been said. The option certainly for electronic participation should be there. I agree with the points made, certainly around medical, around family reason, illness, elder care, bereavement. I don't think we need to get specific other than family matters, family reasons. And another item to possibly consider, to Councillor Ryan's point, is conflicts with other commissions or conferences, I guess. You may be at a conference without an ability to reschedule your participation there. So you may be in Edmonton or Calgary attending that event and be able to dedicate 2 or 3 hours in the day or 4 hours in the day to participate in a council session. I would throw that on the table for consideration. And then I'm not sure how and where this would fit with vacation. Now, we said you're allowed to miss, I think, up to 3 meetings. So vacation for me would have a question mark. And with that, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I think the key point here is a councillor attending more than 2 consecutive council or committee meetings through electronic communication must be obtained through council. So at that point of time, if they request to be missing more than 2 meetings is when we would address this. I don't think we need to delve into conferences, or some committees are only by Zoom or by Teams, and I think we have to leave that alone. That's not our call. So I think the question is, what criteria are we going to say we will grant permission for them to extend electronic meetings? And do we just say under personal reasons, under health reasons, and leave it at that? And that's the criteria, and we can go around and discuss this forever, but that is the question.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and I think Councillor Blatz just hit it on the head. We narrow it down to those 2 reasons, whether you want to call it personal or family, makes no difference to me, but I think that those would be the only 2. When you were talking about going on a conference, we're talking about more than 2 consecutive meetings that you would require approval by council to be away for or sit in on electronically. So a conference wouldn't do it. A regular vacation wouldn't do it. I know I'm going on vacation in March. I'm missing 1 council meeting. Don't need special permission for that. I'm probably not going to be putting my computer down at the beach. So so if you're only missing one, that's not a big deal. We're talking about something that's going to be extended for a longer period of time.
Thank you for that, Legislative Coordinator. And then we'll wrap it up. I think we've got a direction going. Oh, and then Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, through the chair. Something that just clicked when Councillor Daly said scheduling conflicts. Again, we are trying to write this bylaw for new people because you guys are experts and you know already how to do the meeting so great. One of the things could be a work conflict. Maybe we get a newly elected council person that can attend the meetings by electronic only because they can sit in their office and attend. It could be a work conflict or a scheduling issue, and maybe they can only come to that first meeting of the month via virtual. That might be something for a new council term to maybe think about. Maybe, I don't know. To me, this is something that we're definitely going to include as it goes forward to legal. But it just, when you said that, that sort of, I thought about a new person, and they might not be retired and they might be working a full-time job, right? So we would also be looking at time of meetings going forward. A professional, working professional, yeah. Sorry for rambling.
Thank you. And Councillor Walsh?
Yeah, I have consensus, but my question is, should we work 71 and 73 because they're almost in conflict? Because 71 says you may attend through electronic. Yeah, so I would tweak those two together, and that would be.
Okay, so a little bit of wordsmithing there with clauses 71 and 73, and I think directionally we're saying we have consensus around up to 2 meetings. And are we going to specify health, medical, family reasons? Leave it at that? And we have the question mark to be postponed, I guess, relative to this potential work conflict, because I've got some very definitive thoughts on that as far as council obligations and professional work obligations. So, but I think we're fine with leave any reference to work obligations for now. Are you clear, Legislative Coordinator? Okay. Thank you. I think we've wrapped up the discussion on that particular item. Item number 6 for council's consideration, point 100. The recommendation from the committee was to delete this entirely as it is covered within the MGA, and particularly section 199, subsection 5. Are there any thoughts, comments relative to the deletion of that particular clause and slot? Seeing none, I will take that as consensus that we agree with the committee's recommendation for full deletion of that item. The last point that was raised within the agenda is item number 7.123, the recording of every vote. And specifically the question within the agenda, is this something council is interested in implementing to happen on every vote? And with that, I will throw that up for discussion around the table. Blatz.
As I mentioned earlier, then, for those who do view our meetings or wish to view our meetings, they can see how each and every one of us do vote. And if you feel strongly enough as a councillor, you do have the right to mention prior to making the motion that you wish to have the votes recorded, which therefore they are. And until we actually move forward to our new electronic meeting management software, I really think that at this point in time, that would be worked into the document correct, Legislative Coordinator? Yeah. So at that point in time, those are my comments on this.
Mayor Dahl? Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, I'm in favor of leaving it the way it is. Yeah, people who are watching can see, but they also see and hear the discussion and the reason for the voting, where people reading minutes have no clue what was discussed or why you either supported or opposed it. So You know, as council, we've all agreed that once we make a motion, we all support that motion. So showing that in the public is a recorded vote, I don't think works that well, honestly.
Mayor Dahl?
Thank you. I would like to note that what Councillor Blatz and Councillor Walsh just stated, there is the right for a councillor to use a recorded vote if they're extremely passionate about something and they really do want their vote recorded. I would encourage, if that's the way they feel, they have that right. But I do agree that it would cause some conflicts with the chair, the person that's chairing the meeting, if we did go 100% to electronic voting as an option, because then does the chair know if it's carried or if somebody opposed or whether it was carried? I like it the way it is too.
Legislative clerk, or coordinator, sorry?
Brent did. I know. Sorry, thank you, through the chair. So just a bit of information as we go forward. As Councillor Blatz has mentioned, we are looking at meeting management. I'm working with them right now. I just actually had to answer a whole bunch of questions on what my minutes will look like, and I've left the recording of votes clear and empty until we had this discussion. So I think, from what I've seen as an example, in the new meeting management system, you will have the opportunity to vote right on the screen, for, opposed, or abstain. If you abstain, of course, you have to tell why. But that will then be captured either as voted on and passed, defeated, or I guess that would be the generic, and then it would have the names if that's what we choose to do down the road. So I'm just telling you that because in the future, it is going to be more electronic. My understanding is you'll probably be voting on your screen. So just think of that. And so to answer your question, it would come up. Motion passed, motion defeated, etc.
Thank you, Legislative Coordinator. And my question to you, and then I will add my brief comments. The timing for this is approximately how far into the future?
I hope to have it implemented and us using it around May long weekend, before the move, to work with the kinks.
Thank you.
Bugs.
And just my thought, I think we have consensus, and certainly with the Legislative Coordinator's comments there, to maintain the status quo, but I do like the idea of recorded votes. I hear the reasons not to, but in terms of openness and accountability, I like to come at it from that perspective. Certainly you can go to YouTube video, but that implies then watching and flipping and trying to pinpoint exactly when the votes were taken and then trying to see who voted in which way. I do like the idea of just simply going to the minutes when they're printed and available online. You can then see, if we were to record votes, how council voted, and then make a determination whether you want to then watch the YouTube for that particular item, motion, and get an idea on what the discussion is. But again, it becomes a little bit of a moot point, given that by hopefully May long weekend, we will have electronic voting, and that will appease some of the need for openness. And I'm also concerned with, you can ask for a recorded vote, but what are the motives? What's the intent of the individual? People will throw out terms like political grandstanding and everything, whereas if you have a recorded vote on everything, it eliminates some of that suspicion. Legislative Coordinator.
Just going to add, thank you through the chair, I was just going to add, as you referenced, having to find stuff, the part of the new program will be bookmarking every agenda item as it comes up, so you'll be able to find it relatively easy.
Perfect, because I have had to do a little bit, I'm sure we all have, a little bit of a hunt and peck through a couple hours of YouTube video. So looking forward to that change, May long weekend, give or take-ish. And so with that, I think we have consensus on that particular point of recording votes and waiting with bated breath that we will maintain the status quo. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and I'm ready to make a motion here, but the last item that I wish to bring to council's attention is on page 31, which is our council and committee meeting procedure guidance, reference sheet, which will be laminated and placed at everybody, and in every counselor's drawer. So it will be at our fingertips, so this should help if there are any further questions or clarity as to the reference to the bylaw.
Councillor Walsh?
Just a point of clarification going through this. In the definitions, it says point of privilege, but on page 20, 110, and it says question of privilege, and I'm wondering if they're the same thing. The definition number 33 says point of privilege. And on page 20, under 110, question of privilege, and I'm wondering if they meant to be the same thing. Then it's just a grammatical change. Thank you.
We'll leave that with our very competent legislative coordinator. And once the document is reviewed and sent on to legal and so on to address any of those gaps. And before we take a motion on this item, which I think we're close, but Councillor Blatz, in your introductory comments, you had raised the potential around, I think, clauses or items 93 and 94. Perhaps requiring some additional vetting, review, discussion, I'm not sure. And then we'll take one last go around the horseshoe if there are any other aspects to the document. I think we're very close to closing discussion on this, but Councillor Blatz, your introductory comments specifically referenced items 93 or 90 and 94. I'm not sure exactly what those are.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and I just wanted to point those out to you, that we had included those for the next term, because it would be something that would be an addition for a brand-new counselor, and I just was making that more as a reference to point it out for everyone's attention. My apologies for not being clear on that comment.
Nope, perfect. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure we didn't overlook anything there, and I will take one last canvass of council relative to the entire doc, if there are any revisions. Again, this will come back to council. I believe it'll certainly be vetted again or vetted through legal and grammatical errors or gaps, address some wordsmithing and so on, and it will certainly come back to council again at a future time. So if there are no other comments, questions on this procedural bylaw, I would look for a motion. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I move that council accept the Procedural Bylaw Review Committee recommendations as presented and direct the Chief Administrative Officer to bring back to a future council meeting upon completion of legal review.
And I will call for the vote. Of course, that will encompass some of our word changes, clauses. Yep, okay. So with that, I will call for the vote. All in favor? Passed unanimously. And again, my thanks to the three-member committee, Councillor Blatz, Councillor Ryan, and Councillor Cummings, I believe. No doubt a highly efficient, finely tuned committee that pulled that together. So thank you for your efforts. Look forward to moving that along. And with that, we are now on to page 33, item 3B, secondary suites presentation. Director Pedro.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to call forward our Manager of Planning and Infrastructure, James Crozier, and our planner, Kyle Sloan, to walk us through our secondary suite update and provide a bit of a presentation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, councillors, directors. As I'm sure council recalls, in July of 2023, council passed some incentives in regards to secondary suites. As that incentive program is coming to a close in a few months, we wanted to come to council and provide an update on how that incentive program has been going, as well as administrative thoughts on moving forward up to and beyond July, when the current program concludes. I brought Mr. Sloan with me, who's going to walk us through the first little bit, and then I'll wrap it up here at the end.
Thank you, everybody. I'll first go through with an overview of the incentive program to date and how we feel it has been working. So it was implemented in July 2023 for 2 years expected, or so far it would conclude in July 2025. The incentive includes waiving development permit fees, which is $200 for existing suites, to be brought into compliance. So existing illegal suites or suites that we didn't know about, as well as relaxation of parking requirements for those suites. The reason being that if they've been used as suites with the parking on site, we haven't been hearing parking complaints about them, so the parking on site is deemed adequate for the use that's already there. There's also relaxation of our square footage requirements for these existing suites, being 80 square meters maximum or 40% of the total floor area of the house. Again, because they're existing, and it doesn't make sense to then require the owner to wall off an area of the suite just so it meets these requirements when it's already built. And then there's an allowance for secondary suites developed prior to 2007 to comply with fire code requirements from the time. This has fairly significant differences compared to a new application, largely relating to HVAC and sound attenuation. Separate heat sources is usually the biggest cost factor in this, and how it helps these existing suites come into compliance at minimal cost for applicants. So the reason we brought this incentive into operation had a few different aspects to it. One, to increase safety. By doing this, we have our building inspector do inspections through the building permit process and make sure that it is up to at least the codes of the time when it was built or current building codes, to make sure that these residents are safe in their dwellings. We also, many of the steps we did were to remove red tape to speed up the process of getting these approvals processed and approved, and to make sure that these illegal suites that we don't know about are brought into compliance. That helps us build a stronger registry of known suites, and it also helps when being a college community. I get quite a few calls from parents of students who are starting here, who call about a certain property, and the more of these suites that are brought into compliance, I can assure them, yes, it's been inspected, it's approved, it's safe for your child to reside in. And then relating to safety there, which is a concern of many of the residents of the suites, by doing this, we can ensure that these housing units that are safe and affordable, and they do provide a strong supply of safe and affordable housing units for the community. So reviewing our successes so far that we see from this program, from the incentive program, this first graph shows secondary suite applications over the years, going back the past 25 years. Obviously, the 2024 had way more suite applications than any previous year. On the bar graph, the orange indicates existing suites that have been applied for, and the blue is for newly developed secondary suites. I will say that in previous years, we weren't necessarily monitoring whether it was existing or new. It was just worded as a secondary suite application until the last few years, where we did decide to break that down. So the incentives for the approval have been effective, looking at the numbers of applications we've seen. Although the incentives are not applicable to new suites, and there's also been a large increase for those applications. We can't be confident in saying why that is, but because the incentives have been promoted on social media, in the newspaper, at council, wherever people may have heard about them, they may have been thinking about secondary suites even if they didn't already have one, and maybe a new application came from that, even if the incentive didn't apply. So it is difficult to say, but regardless, there's been a large increase in the number of applications in the previous year. And I will say, actually, I was reviewing or doing our statistics reporting for January 2023 this morning, and the building permit, or the building inspector has approved 4 new secondary suite permits in January alone, 2 new and 2 existing. So this seems to be continuing into 2025. Looking at how secondary suites can help play a role with our efforts to improve the affordable housing situation in town. These charts show the share of new housing units by type for the previous decade and then in 2024. This has been discussed over the past few weeks as we were reviewing statistics for 2024. But most of that conversation revolved around multifamily housing, which is the large green portion of the pie chart on the right. And that can be skewed by one major project or two and make a graph look like this. But one thing I wanted to point out in this context is that secondary suite applications in 2024 nearly tripled their share of the overall new housing stock in town. Now, many of those were existing, but as far as housing unit approvals, they were nearly triple their share from the previous decade, the average in the previous decade. So being that one conversation we had recently about multifamily housing being approved, but maybe taking 3 or 4 years to actually be developed so that people can inhabit them, secondary suites are an affordable option that can be developed quite quickly and provide that housing to the market in a matter of months rather than years. So to encourage more secondary suite development, we think is a very strong approach for helping affordable housing. And then I will have James come back up and discuss moving forward.
Thank you. So within administration, we've started to discuss how we want to continue to move forward with secondary suites specifically. So we've met with our communications group to talk about continued communications through till the end of this program, continuing to get the word out to people who may have an existing suite, let them know that this is an option to bring it into compliance. We also are planning to do a better job of tracking our illegal suites. Something in the past hasn't necessarily been a priority for us. Moving forward, we think it's prudent to improve our tracking of illegal suites. And on the fire code and safety code side, there's an onus on us to take measures if we're aware of an illegal suite that's not in compliance. So this will help us along that path as well. In looking at other municipalities, one thing we found that we like is having a public-facing map that shows where approved suites are. This helps Kyle maybe not get as many phone calls from parents trying to figure out where their kids can live. But on the other side, we think it's also a good incentive for people. It's easy for anybody to go on and see if they have a secondary suite, and maybe that helps them improve renting out their suite when that time comes. Increased enforcement. Again, this goes back to fire code and safety code. There's an onus on us to enforce illegal suites that we are aware of, so we will be continuing with that effort. And as part of the LUB review, we're taking a close look at all housing, secondary suites being one of them. Just to highlight this item specifically, we've already come back to council regarding this on a couple things. We've allowed detached suites in R2, which was not allowed before, and the other one is now slipping my mind. Yes, and secondary suites and duplexes on individual lots, which was also not allowed before. As we develop a firmer plan closer to July, our administration's thought is to come back to council and request a continuation of this incentive program with some of these changes that I've mentioned here. Like I say, that'll take a little bit more ironing out in the next couple months, but that is our hope. And just to wrap up, I'd like to just remind council and the public at large why it's good to have your suites in compliance. So again, for safety, if it's compliant, you know that if it meets the current fire safety standards, you have proper egress and accessibility during emergencies. This is something we hear quite a bit from emergency services. So when they go to a call where they don't know that an illegal suite is there, they don't necessarily know that they're meant to be looking for somebody, which can increase risks quite a bit in that case. Help reduce risk to the tenant injuries. Insurance coverage. Illegal suites may void policies or limit payouts in case of damage or accidents. That can be a lot of risk put on somebody if they have an illegal suite in their house. Bringing your suite up to compliance can allow you to access financial benefits. For example, the federal government currently has a program where if you want to add a secondary suite to your house, you can access $80,000 loan for 2% interest, which is pretty cheap money. It also gives the owners legal protections. You can avoid fines, penalties, and legal actions from the municipality. Or in the event of tenant disputes, landlords of legal suites have better access to protections under the landlord-tenant laws. Thank you. That's the end of that. If you have any questions, comments, Kyle and/or I would be happy to answer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Crozier and Mr. Sloan, and with that, I will throw it open for questions. Councillor Blatz, I believe you had a question, then Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and through you to Mr. Crozier, our Manager of Planning and Infrastructure, or Kyle, our Municipal Land Use Planner. Under the access to financial benefits here, and pardon my ignorance or my not noticing, but have we done any advertising to state that this is available? Or is this just a recent incentive? I don't recall ever seeing anything, and I think it might be a benefit and an encouragement if we were to go ahead and advertise and make this known to people. It could increase some of our suites, people either applying for suites or those that are not in compliance or they're afraid to come forward, and we may get more legitimate suites within the town of Olds.
We have not advertised it, and I agree that it has flown under the radar. I don't think the federal government has necessarily done a great job in advertising it as well. It is something when we met with communications, we did discuss trying to come up with a way to get the word out on it. We don't have a specific plan, but it is definitely something we are hoping to focus on in some type of advertisement or public notice in the future.
Thank you.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I have a question either for Mr. Crozier or Mr. Sloan. Just wondering about, so the totals would be 12, I would imagine, 2 now in January and then 10 over the time of the program of bringing illegal suites to make them compliant. I'm just wondering, do you have any idea of the percentage that are non-compliant still?
I don't think either of us have an idea of percentage-wise, but we do know that there are more out there that either have seen that, yes, we have incentives for applications, but maybe haven't been enforcing, which is where we'd like to do both. So that if they know that if they don't apply, they might find themselves in trouble for our enforcement process, then we can hope that number of applications increases. But we don't have an idea yet of what proportion are still out there that we don't know about.
Are there any other questions for our distinguished guests, presenters? If not, I just have one kind of comment question, and it's along the lines of Councillor Ryan. You referenced at some point in time we'll be looking to deal with the illegal suites. I presume the way we find out is largely through complaints or questions, either from the renter or the renter's parents or whatever?
Yes, currently that's how we would find out about any of them, would be usually from the tenant, sometimes from a buyer who buys a property and then ask, or they're looking to buy a property and they ask if it's a legal suite. Part of our discussion for the next year is more proactive searches, looking at rental listings and things like that online, so it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be complaint driven in the future.
Oh, great, thanks. And yeah, a good approach, you're right, certainly is targeting or looking at the rental offerings for sure. Is you mentioned, well, it's on the screen right now, the safety aspect, certainly huge for anybody in basement suites, so can't understate that importance. And unless there are no other questions, Mayor Dahl? Oh, okay. Yeah, and thank you guys again for the presentation. Look forward to what comes before council in the future as far as next steps. And Mayor Dahl, your motion?
Yes, I'd like to thank you as well. Yes, I move that the Committee of the Whole accepts for information the secondary suites incentives update. Very well done, thank you.
I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Unanimously passed. We are now on to following the agenda under new business, page 41, item 4A, policy 232C, special events and repeal bylaw 2025-01. Turn it over to Director of Operations Pedro for that item.
All right, thank you again. And I will pass this on to our Director of Community Services, Director Lapointe, to take us through this special events policy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson and Council. This is pretty straightforward. This policy outlines what kind of support will be provided to groups utilizing public facilities and spaces for their events. It clearly identifies how special event documentation can be obtained and significant planning parameters these groups should be aware of. It also links back to the fee schedule already established in the Town of Old's rate policy. And with that, Supervisor Dixon or myself are happy to answer any questions you have on the policy.
Are there any questions? I guess I just have, I think, one question, I think. So when we talk special events, so remind me, because I know this came up before in the context of noise and noise issues in the community. Ironically, I think there was a letter to the editor in the paper here recently about noise and events. How does the ORE fall into this place? Do they need to apply for special events, given that it's at the ORE?
Because ORE is privately owned property, they do not fall under this, they will not need to get an event permit, although we do strongly suggest that organizations like that work with us, so we're aware of things like parking issues, and they're really good at doing that anyways. But then also the noise issue that you spoke of is actually covered under our community standards bylaw. So there is some guiding parameters around that too.
Yeah, great, thank you. Mayor Dahl?
Thank you. I just have one question. Good policy, I must say. Is a month or just over a little 45 days, have you found that that's plenty enough time for people to be able to contact you and you get things in order for them?
So that is actually more time than we usually get now. So this will be also an education process for our groups within the community that we're asking for more of a lead time. That way it does give us, with this, it gives the, parks time to be able to get the park ready if they're happening to have something there. So this will be plenty of time, and it actually will give us that more lead time that will be great for all of our organization.
Thank you. And seeing no other questions, based on the cover sheet for this particular item, I believe I'm looking for three motions. and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. So I would look for a motion for the first item. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Wilson. I'm stumbling over that today, I don't know why. I move that the committee accepts for information special events policy number 232C and requests that it be brought to a future council meeting for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I will call for the vote. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. I will now look for the second motion. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I move that the special events procedure number 232P be accepted as presented for information.
It's catchy.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Blatz. I will call for the vote. All in favor? Passed unanimously. And the third and final motion specific to this particular item. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that the Committee of the Whole accepts the information, the appeal, bylaw 2025-01, and requests that it be brought to a future council meeting for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Thank you, Council. Passed unanimously. With that, we're on to our final item under the public forum of the Committee of the Whole, page 47, item 4B, policy 131C, family and support services. Again, I will look to my left for further guidance.
Thank you, and I will continue to pass this along to Director Lapointe.
Excellent. I will aim to be brief on this one as well. As you may know, Council repealed FCSS bylaw 2019-25 in 2022, and administration is introducing a follow-up policy now that the Community Connection Center has been established and a clearer understanding of FCSS's facilitation role has taken root. The policy also clearly identifies the town's commitment to aligning with the provincial program and its related focus areas. And again, Supervisor Dixon and myself are happy to answer any questions that you have on this item.
Thank you, Director Lapointe. I would turn the forum now over to council if there are any questions, clarifications. Seeing none, I will then ask for a motion. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that the Committee of the Whole accepts the Family and Community Support Services Policy 131C as presented for information and request that it be brought to a future council meeting for consideration.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Unanimously passed. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Director Lapointe and Ms. Dixon. And with that, we have concluded our open part of the agenda of the Committee of the Whole. Those that are viewing, you will see a blank screen for a period of time, perhaps with some music, and I will look for a motion to take us into a closed session at 2:23, if my eyes are correct. Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that we move into closed session at 2:23 deal with items number 1, FOIP number 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party, and FOIP 17, disclosure harmful to personal privacy.
Well, we don't need to really specify any more who attends, so we'll deal with that.
That's not really passed yet, is it? But anyway. Who do we want? I look to guidance to.
Yeah, fair enough. Director Lapointe and Marcy and myself will stay for this portion.
Thank you.
All right.
I so move that.
Thank you. With that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Unanimously passed. We are now in a closed session. Thank you. Thank you and welcome back, everybody. We are into the final moments of our resumption of our open session for the Committee of the Whole meeting on February 3rd, and I would ask Councillor Ryan for a motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. So I got it right that time. I make a motion to accept for information the report on user group contact.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimously supported. And with that, we will end our Committee of the Whole meeting at 2:51. Thank you, everyone, and stay warm.